The transmission arrived at 3:47 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, and within 6 hours, every major space agency on Earth had gone dark. Before we begin, I need you to do something for me. Comment your city name below and tell me, have you noticed anything unusual in the night sky? Over the past 72 hours, NASA, ESA, and several international observatories are quietly collecting data on atmospheric anomalies, and your observation, no matter how small, may be critical to what I'm about to reveal. My name is Michio Kaku, and what I'm about to share may change the way you see humanity's place in the universe. I have spent my entire life studying the cosmos. I've stood at the edge of theoretical physics, peered into the mathematics of higher dimensions, and spoken confidently about the future of human civilization among the stars. But nothing, absolutely nothing, in my decades of research prepared me for what 3I Atlas sent us in its final hours. You know it as 3I Atlas, the interstellar object, the wanderer from beyond our solar system. When it was first detected in 2019, we thought it was simply another comet, a chunk of ancient ice and rock passing through our cosmic neighborhood on its way to nowhere. We've seen these before. Oumuamua in 2017 startled us with its strange acceleration and elongated shape, but we explained it away. We always explain it away. But 3I Atlas was different from the beginning. It came from outside, not from the Oort cloud, not from the Kuiper belt, but from true interstellar space. Its trajectory suggested it had been traveling for millions of years, perhaps tens of millions, through the cold dark between stars. And unlike Oumuamua, which tumbled silently through our system and vanished, 3I Atlas began behaving in ways that defied our models. It slowed down, not much, just enough that our instruments caught the deviation. A deceleration so subtle that it took 3 separate observatories to confirm it wasn't instrumental error. And when something slows down in space without a visible mechanism, no jets of gas, no fragmentation, no gravitational assist, you have to start asking uncomfortable questions. The first message arrived on May 19, 2025. I wasn't supposed to know about it. Very few people were. It came in the form of a tightly focused electromagnetic burst, lasting exactly 11.7 seconds, aimed directly at Earth, not broadcast in all directions like a natural radio source, but aimed with the precision of a laser at our planet. The signal was captured by the Very Large Array in New Mexico, the Arecibo Successor Array in Puerto Rico, and FAST in China. All 3 facilities detected it simultaneously, and here's what made every scientist in those control rooms go silent. The signal contained a mathematical primer. You see, if you want to communicate with an alien intelligence, you start with math. It's the universal language. Prime numbers, the Fibonacci sequence, fundamental constants like pi, these things are true everywhere in the universe. And this signal began exactly that way. It started with the first 12 prime numbers transmitted in binary, followed by a representation of hydrogen's emission spectrum, the signature of the most abundant element in the cosmos. It was saying, we know what you know, we understand physics, we are not random noise. But then the message did something that made my hands shake when I first saw the data. It shifted into a pattern that matched ancient Sumerian mathematical notation. Let me be clear about what I'm saying. This object, this traveler from interstellar space, sent us a message that incorporated a human mathematical system that hasn't been widely used in 5,000 years. The Sumerians, one of humanity's first great civilizations, used a base 60 counting system, the same system we still use to divide our hours and minutes, and embedded in this cosmic transmission was that exact structure. The implications are staggering. Either someone out there has been watching us far longer than we imagined, studying our civilizations, our languages, our development, or something even more unsettling is true. This message was always meant for us, prepared long ago, waiting for the precise moment in our technological evolution when we would be capable of receiving it. The team that decoded the message worked in complete isolation. No press releases, no journal publications, no academic conferences. What they found in the deeper layers of that transmission has been classified at levels I cannot name. But I can tell you this, the message wasn't random data or simple mathematics. It was a warning. Encoded in the signal was a star map, not of our local galactic neighborhood. We expected that. But a map showing Earth's exact position in relation to 17 other star systems, all within a radius of 200 light years. and next to each star there was a symbol. Most of the symbols were simple geometric shapes: circles, triangles, squares. But next to our sun there was something different: a broken circle, an incomplete loop, and beneath it a sequence that our best cryptographers eventually recognized as a countdown. When the second transmission arrived 72 hours later, I was standing in the operations room at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I had been called in as a consultant along with a handful of other physicists, linguists, and astrobiologists. The atmosphere was thick with tension. We all knew something unprecedented was happening, but none of us understood the scope yet. The second message was longer, nearly 4 minutes of continuous data, far more complex than the first. And this time it wasn't just mathematics and star maps. It contained sound. Now, sound cannot travel through space. There's no medium to carry the waves. But what I mean is that embedded in the electromagnetic signal was an audio file perfectly compressed, perfectly intact. When we played it through the speakers in that laboratory, I heard something that made every hair on my body stand on end. It was music. Not alien music, not some bizarre atonal sequence we couldn't comprehend. It was human music. Specifically, it was a fragment of a Sumerian hymn, one of the oldest pieces of written music ever discovered, a prayer to the goddess Inanna from nearly 4,000 years ago. But here's the impossible part. This recording was sung in a language reconstruction that was only completed by scholars in 2018. Whoever or whatever sent this knew not just ancient Sumerian, they knew our modern academic reconstruction of its pronunciation. They had been listening. One of the linguists in the room, a woman from Cambridge who specialized in dead languages, started crying. "This isn't possible," she kept saying. "This isn't possible." But the recording kept playing, and there beneath the hymn we could hear something else, a rhythmic pattern, a pulse. It sounded like a heartbeat. The NASA director, who was overseeing the analysis, made the decision then to brief the White House. Within 8 hours, representatives from 14 nations were on encrypted conference calls, and still the public knew nothing. How do you tell 8 billion people that an interstellar object has been sending us messages in our own ancient languages? How do you explain that we might be part of something far larger and far older than we ever imagined? The third transmission came on June 2nd. By this point, 3I Atlas was already beginning its exit from the inner solar system, accelerating back toward the heliopause and the darkness beyond. We didn't have much time left to study it, and this message was different again. This time, it contained images, not photographs, and something stranger. They were more like blueprints, schematics, diagrams of structures we didn't recognize, technologies we couldn't comprehend, but rendered with such precision and mathematical clarity that we knew they were instructions for something. One of the aerospace engineers analyzing the data stopped mid-briefing and said, "This looks like a propulsion system, but the physics shouldn't work according to our current understanding." Another scientist pointed out something that sent chills through the entire room. One of the diagrams contained Earth, our planet, rendered in perfect detail down to the continental outlines, the polar ice caps, the major ocean currents, and overlaid on that image was a grid, a lattice of points spanning the entire globe, with several of those points glowing brighter than the others. Archaeological sites, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, Teotihuacan in Mexico, the Great Pyramids of Egypt, Angkor Wat in Cambodia, Stonehenge in England, Nazca in Peru, sites that have puzzled us for centuries. Monuments built with astronomical precision by civilizations that supposedly lacked advanced technology. The message was clear: we've been here before. But the final image in that transmission was what made me realize we were no longer dealing with a scientific curiosity. We were dealing with a revelation that would shake the foundations of human civilization. It showed Earth again, but this time from a great distance, pulled back to show our entire solar system. And surrounding us like a vast sphere encompassing everything from the sun to the Oort cloud was a boundary, a shell. And inside that shell, in positions that corresponded exactly to the orbits of certain asteroids and trans-Neptunian objects we'd observed over the years, were markers. Someone had quarantined us. The galactic community, if that's what we should call them, had placed us inside a bubble, a protective barrier, or a containment field. We didn't know which. And 3I Atlas, this interstellar messenger, had just crossed that boundary to deliver its warning directly to us. Then the signal stopped. For 3 days, we heard nothing. The observatories kept their instruments trained on 3I Atlas, tracking it as it accelerated outward at speeds that our physics said shouldn't be possible for an object of its size without visible propulsion. It was leaving, heading back to the stars, and we thought the communication was over. We were wrong. The final transmission arrived on June 5th at exactly midnight Universal Coordinated Time. Symbolic, perhaps, the death of one day, the birth of another. And this message was the shortest of all, just 23 seconds. But those 23 seconds contained more information, more raw data than all the previous transmissions combined. It was compressed at a ratio our computers said violated information theory, packed so densely that it took our most powerful quantum processors 14 hours to fully unpack it. And when they did, we found ourselves staring at something that looked like a history book, the history of humanity. Not as we know it, not as we teach it in schools or write it in textbooks, but our true history. A timeline stretching back not thousands of years, but hundreds of thousands of years, showing civilizations that rose and fell, technological societies that reached heights we're only now approaching and then collapsed, their knowledge lost, their achievements buried under ice ages and geological upheaval. The timeline showed intervention points, moments when something, some outside force, nudged human development, the sudden appearance of agriculture, the inexplicable leap in cognitive ability that happened roughly 50,000 years ago, the emergence of written language in multiple locations simultaneously. These weren't natural evolutionary developments. The data suggested they were guided. We are a project, an experiment in consciousness, in technological development, in social evolution, and we're not the first. The timeline showed other worlds, other civilizations orbiting other stars. Some had progressed beyond us, others had destroyed themselves, and a few, just a few, had been invited beyond the quarantine. That's what this was about. 3I Atlas wasn't just a messenger, it was an evaluator. It had been sent to observe us, to measure our progress, to determine whether humanity was ready for contact, whether we were ready to know that we are not alone, that we have never been alone, and that our entire existence has been carefully monitored by intelligences that view our civilization the way we might view a child learning to walk. And embedded at the very end of that final transmission, written in 17 different human languages, including English, was a single sentence: "You are not ready, but time is short." As the object we call 3I Atlas crossed back over the boundary of our solar system on June 8th, the last observation showed it accelerating to a significant fraction of light speed, using principles our physicists are still trying to understand. And then it vanished from our instruments, swallowed by the infinite dark between the stars. But its message remains. In the weeks since, I've watched as governments struggle with how or whether to disclose this information. I've attended meetings where generals and presidents debate the social implications of revealing that humanity is essentially living in a cosmic terrarium, watched over by forces we don't understand. I've seen scientists break down as they grapple with the reality that our entire understanding of human history might be incomplete. And I've thought a lot about what it means to be human. We've always imagined first contact as something glorious, ships descending from the sky, beings emerging to share their wisdom, ushering us into a galactic federation of advanced civilizations. We thought we'd be welcomed as equals, as fellow travelers in the cosmos. But what if we're not ready? What if we're still too violent, too divided, too primitive in our thinking? What if the quarantine isn't keeping others out? What if it's keeping us in? The message said, time is short. Short for what? Is something coming? Some cosmic deadline we're approaching? Or is it a warning about us that if we don't evolve, don't grow beyond our current limitations, we'll destroy ourselves before we ever get the chance to join whatever is waiting out there beyond our solar cradle? I think about those archaeological sites marked on the transmission, the ancient structures built with impossible precision, and I wonder, were those messages too? Lessons left by previous visitors encoded in stone and mathematics, waiting for us to be smart enough to decode them. I think about the countdown symbol next to our sun on that star map. What happens when it reaches zero? And I think about consciousness itself. The transmission suggested that what we consider intelligence, our technology, our science, our civilization, these are just the surface. There's something deeper. They're measuring something about awareness, about how we treat each other, about whether we can evolve beyond the tribal conflicts and existential fears that have defined us for millennia. We are being tested, and we don't even fully understand the test. Follow this channel as we continue decoding the universe's final warnings, because whether the world's governments choose to disclose this or not, the truth is emerging. And you deserve to know that when you look up at the night sky, you're not looking at an empty cosmos. You're looking at a community that's been watching us, waiting for us, hoping we'll grow wise enough to join them. But the question that haunts me, the question I cannot answer, is this: what happens if we fail? The Sumerians had a word, Anunnaki, which they used to describe those who came from the sky. For thousands of years, we dismissed these stories as mythology, as primitive humans trying to explain natural phenomena they didn't understand. But what if they weren't myths? What if they were memories? What if 3i Atlas was saying, we've been here before, we watched you before, we're watching you now? And what if the reason the transmission ended with time is short is because something is about to change? Not out there in the distant cosmos, but here with us. Some threshold we're approaching where the quarantine either lifts or closes permanently. Comment below. After learning this, do you think humanity is ready for contact? Are we wise enough, evolved enough, united enough to be trusted with the knowledge that we're not alone? Because somewhere out there, beyond the edge of our solar system, beyond the invisible boundary we never knew existed, someone is waiting for our answer. And the silence of space is not empty anymore. It's full of expectations.